Have you ever wondered why modern people wearing high-tech jackets freeze faster than peasants in the 13th century? We are used to thinking that synthetic materials and membranes are the pinnacle of evolution in cold protection. However, history shows us a completely different picture of survival in harsh winter conditions. People in the past did not have central heating or warm cars, so their clothing was the only barrier between life and death. Every item in their wardrobe was the result of thousands of years of trial and error. If you found yourself in a medieval winter forest wearing a modern down jacket, your chances of surviving the night would be minimal. Their secret lay not in the thickness of the fabric, but in a deep understanding of the physics of heat and moisture. Watch the video to the end and you'll learn how the forgotten technology of medieval tailoring can save your life in conditions where modern synthetics fail. What if I told you that everything you believed about modern clothing is not true? We are used to trusting labels that promise complete protection from wind and moisture. Marketing has convinced us that polyester and nylon are superior to natural fibers in every way. But plastic fibers have one critical flaw that becomes fatal in the wild. They create a greenhouse effect, trapping body moisture inside an airtight cocoon. As soon as you stop moving, this cold condensation begins to rapidly steal your body heat. Medieval man could not afford the luxury of getting wet from his own sweat. His life was spent in constant physical labor outdoors in all weather conditions. Clothing had to function as a complex engineering system of thermoregulation. It was not just fabric, but a tool for survival, honed by centuries of natural selection. If clothing failed its owner, he simply did not live to see the next spring. Therefore, ineffective solutions died out along with their wearers. Modern winter clothing is designed for short trips from transport to indoors. It does an excellent job of keeping you warm for an hour or two. But try spending several days in it in the forest without an external heat source. Synthetic insulation clumps together, losing its insulating properties at the slightest dampness. Membranes become clogged with dirt and sweat, ceasing to wick moisture away. As a result, you find yourself in an icy shell that does not keep you warm, but only accelerates cooling. Natural materials from the Middle Ages worked on completely different physical principles. They did not try to fight nature or completely isolate themselves from it. Instead, they used the properties of fibers to interact with the environment. It was a symbiosis where each layer performed its specific function. The system was modular, allowing you to regulate the temperature without removing the main protection. Imagine the weight of modern winter gear needed to spend the night in a winter forest. You would need thermal underwear, a fleece jacket, a down jacket, and a windproof jacket. All of this takes up a lot of space and requires careful maintenance. Medieval clothing was heavier, but the weight was distributed differently across the body. It did not restrict movement, but became a second skin, familiar and reliable.
5 farthings for the sack.
We often look at images of people from the past with a sense of superiority. It seems to us that their coarse fabrics were a sign of poverty and technological backwardness. But this coarseness was a necessary condition for creating air pockets. It is the air trapped between the fibers that is the best heat insulator. Smooth modern synthetics lack this natural volumetric structure. It is important to understand that medieval clothing could be repaired in any conditions. A torn woolen coat could be sewn up with coarse thread by the fire. A synthetic jacket burned by a spark is almost impossible to repair in the field. A hole in a modern down jacket means a loss of insulation and the end of thermal insulation. Wool, on the other hand, retains its properties even with significant mechanical damage. This reliability shaped people's special attitude towards their belongings. Clothes were not thrown away but served for decades, being passed down from generation to generation. They were altered, repaired, and adapted to the needs of the new owner. It was an investment in one's own safety, not a seasonal purchase. Every patch on such clothing was a story of survival. We have lost this sense of the value and functionality of things. The race for cheapness and fashion has made us forget the main purpose of winter clothing. We have replaced real protection with a pretty picture and loud advertising slogans. And now, when faced with real cold, we find ourselves helpless. We are very interested to hear your opinion on this matter. Do you think that progress in clothing has really benefited humanity, or have we lost important knowledge? Write about it in the comments and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Are you ready to learn the truth about what really saved people from the deadly cold in those days? The foundation of the medieval survival system did not begin with luxurious furs or heavy woolen cloaks, as shown in movies. The undershirt, called a camisole, was the secret and indispensable element that ensured proper body temperature regulation. It was always made exclusively from linen, a natural material with completely unique hygroscopic properties. Linen is capable of instantly absorbing a huge amount of moisture while remaining practically dry to the touch. This amazing property of the fabric was critically important for people who were engaged in hard physical labor all day long. Peasants and warriors sweated constantly, even in the cold, and this sweat was a major threat to their lives. If moisture remained on the body, it quickly cooled down and began to take away precious heat from the body. Linen worked like a powerful pump, removing excess fluid from hot skin. Unlike cotton, which we are used to, which quickly turns into an icy and sticky compress when wet, flax works completely differently. Cotton retains water inside its fibers, cooling the body, which in winter can lead to pneumonia. Linen, on the other hand, quickly distributes moisture over the entire surface of the fabric, greatly increasing the area of evaporation. This allows the human body to remain dry and warm, even during the most intense physical activity. Moisture does not remain on the skin, but is immediately transferred to the next warmer layers of clothing. Thus, the deadly risk of hypothermia due to a wet back was reduced to almost zero. This was the body's first and most important line of defense against the harsh climate. Without this foundation, any fur coat would be useless, as the person would freeze from the inside. The camisole was always very long, reaching to the knees, and often much lower. This created an additional and very important air layer around the hips, groin, and lower back. The shirt was tucked into the pants or wrapped around the legs, protecting the most vulnerable areas from drafts. In essence, it was medieval thermal underwear, covering as much of the body as possible. The sleeves were deliberately made quite narrow and long, so as not to create uncomfortable folds under the outer clothing. The folds could rub the skin raw during long periods of work or when wearing armor. The wide collar of the shirt allowed for easy ventilation adjustment without removing other heavy items. If it got too hot, the collar was simply untied, allowing excess steam to escape. It was an incredibly well-designed base layer, on which all other layers of protection were then built. Linen has powerful natural antibacterial properties, which was vital in an era without running water. With few opportunities to wash properly in winter, it was the shirt that protected the skin from infections and irritation. The fabric did not accumulate unpleasant sweat odors as quickly as modern synthetic materials do. The rough and stiff texture of homespun linen also provided constant micro-massage of the skin during movement. This mechanical action improved capillary blood circulation throughout the body. Good blood flow helped maintain body heat through internal resources by dispersing hot blood. A person wearing a linen shirt felt surprisingly comfortable in both the summer heat and the winter cold. Interestingly, the traditional whiteness of linen had not only aesthetic, but also purely practical significance. White, undyed fabric could be boiled in cauldrons and bleached in bright sunlight without fear. This was the only reliable way to disinfect clothes and get rid of parasites such as lice. It was the only layer of clothing that was subjected to frequent and very aggressive washing in lye. Outerwear made of wool was cleaned with brushes or beaten, but washed extremely rarely so as not to damage the fabric. Wool shrank in hot water and lost its warming properties, turning into felt. Therefore, the linen shirt took the brunt of it, sweat, grease, and dirt from the body. A person could have several spare shirts, while expensive outer garments were often limited to just one. The density of medieval linen was significantly higher than the thin samples we are used to today. It was a thick, heavy, and coarse fabric, similar to canvas, which was a good insulator in itself. The fibers were thick and porous, trapping a lot of air inside. Such a shirt lasted for years without wearing out or losing its qualities. The more such a shirt was washed, the softer, whiter, and more pleasant to the body it became. Old, heavily worn shirts were highly valued in the household precisely because of their incredible softness. They were never thrown away, but used for bandaging wounds or swaddling babies. Not a single centimeter of valuable fabric, grown with such difficulty, was wasted. Many modern people greatly underestimate the role of quality underwear in surviving the cold. But experienced travelers know that the ability of the first layer to wick away moisture determines how well the rest of the layers work. If the base layer fails and gets wet, even the warmest coat on top will not save you from freezing. Moisture will become a bridge of cold through which heat will leave the body. Medieval people understood this physical axiom on a deep intuitive level and through generations of experience. Without a high-quality, dry linen shirt, any trip into the winter forest would have been tantamount to suicide. Hunters always took a spare dry shirt with them to change into after strenuous activity. This was more important than a supply of food or weapons. This was only the first but far from the only barrier to the deadly cold. The shirt created a microclimate, but it alone was not enough to protect against the frost. Next came the heavy artillery of the medieval wardrobe, wool and fur. We will talk about these layers later, because they work together. Do you think this ancient plant material can compete with high-tech synthetics in real extreme conditions? Want to know a secret that will change your life and your perception of warmth? Wool was not just a material, but a true technological marvel of the Middle Ages. It is the only natural fiber capable of generating heat when wet. When wool absorbs moisture from the air or from the body, an exothermic chemical reaction occurs. The fabric literally begins to warm you, even when wet. This property made woolen clothing indispensable in damp and cold climates. The structure of wool fiber resembles scales that cling to each other. This creates millions of microscopic air pockets in the fabric. The air in these pockets is heated by body heat and creates a reliable barrier from the outside environment. Even thin wool fabric warms better than a thick layer of cotton or linen, and dense medieval cloth was practically windproof. Wool has a unique self-cleaning ability due to its lanolin content. This natural animal wax repels dirt and water, preventing them from penetrating deep into the structure. Raindrops simply roll off the surface of the fleecy cloth without being absorbed. To get completely wet in a woolen cloak, you would have to spend several hours in the rain. But even then, wet wool will continue to retain heat. Unlike modern synthetics, wool does not melt when exposed to fire. This was vital when the only source of heat was an open fire. Sparks flying from the flames could leave only a black spot on the cloth. A synthetic jacket in such a situation would have caught fire or melted, causing severe burns. Wool allowed people to sleep close to the fire, making maximum use of its heat.
Welcome respite from the cold.
The variety of wool fabrics allowed clothes to be made for any purpose. Coarse, undyed cloth was used for raincoats and work clothes. Thinner and softer wool was used for intermediate layers and festive outfits. Fulled wool became dense, like felt, and even protected against mechanical damage. It was a versatile material, accessible to everyone. Medieval wool was different from what we see in stores today. It retained more natural fat, was coarser and denser. The fabric was often subjected to fulling, a process that knocked the fibers together into a single mass. This treatment made the material virtually waterproof without any chemicals. It was a natural membrane that worked for centuries. Another important aspect was the durability of woolen products under intensive use. Wool is elastic. It stretches and returns to its original shape without deforming. The elbows and knees on woolen clothing did not stretch as quickly as on linen. The fabric breathed, preventing the body from overheating during hard work. It was the perfect balance between insulation and ventilation. The color of woolen clothing was also important, but natural shades prevailed among ordinary people. Gray, brown, and black colors better absorbed the sun's heat on clear winter days. Dyed fabric was more expensive, but its physical properties remained the same. Wool was currency, wealth, and a person's main protection. Without it, the colonization of the northern territories would have been impossible. Modern tourists and survivalists are rediscovering the properties of this material, but we often use only a poor imitation of the cloth worn by our ancestors. Their wool was alive, smelling of sheep and smoke, rough and prickly. It was this authenticity of the material that ensured its incredible effectiveness. If you like this information about the properties of wool, please like this video. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new videos about forgotten technologies of the past that still work today. Guess how long it took to create this perfect engineering solution? The layering system that is sold today as an innovation was standard 1,000 years ago. Medieval people never relied on a single thick coat. They wore a construction set that could be reassembled depending on the weather. The basis of this system was the cotta, a spacious woolen tunic worn over a linen shirt. The cotta created the first serious thermal barrier around the body. It was loose enough not to restrict movement, but close-fitting enough to retain heat. Long sleeves protected the arms, and the hem covered the hips and knees. The air trapped between the shirt and the cotta acted as the first layer of insulation. But this alone was not enough for the harsh winter. A surcoat, or upper tunic made of thicker wool, was worn over the cotta. Often this layer had no sleeves or had wide armholes. This allowed for mobility of the arms while protecting the most important parts, the torso and internal organs. An additional layer of wool on the chest and back doubled the thermal insulation of vital areas. At the same time, the hands did not overheat during active work. This combination created a complex system of air chambers. Warm air did not escape immediately but was retained in the labyrinth of fabric. If it became hot, the top layer could be unlaced or belted differently. The belt played a huge role, cutting off the cold air from below and creating a thermal pocket on the stomach. By tucking the hem of the tunic into the belt, it was possible to adjust the length of the garment. For particularly cold days, there were additional linings and vests. They were often made of sheepskin or old layers of woolen fabric quilted together. This quilted fabric, gambeson, originally a military invention, served well in peacetime as well. The multi-layered fabric worked better than a single thick piece of material. It was softer, more flexible, and retained heat better. It is important to note that the layers were not sewn together permanently. This allowed each piece of clothing to be dried separately by the fire. If the top layer got wet, it could be removed, leaving the dry bottom layer. In a modern jacket, wet insulation means a complete loss of functionality. In the medieval system, the failure of one element did not lead to disaster. The loose fit of all layers ensured good blood circulation. There were no tight elastic bands, cuffs, or thick collars that constricted the blood vessels. Blood circulation is the main way of delivering heat to the extremities. Tight modern shoes and clothing often cause frostbite precisely because they restrict blood flow. Medieval clothing hung loosely on the shoulders, allowing the body to breathe. The different textures of the fabrics in the layers prevented them from slipping and shifting. Wool clung to wool, creating a single monolithic structure. At the same time, the layers rubbed against each other, generating minimal but static electricity and frictional heat. The entire system worked to conserve every joule of energy produced by the body. This cabbage of clothing allowed a person to feel comfortable both indoors and outdoors. Upon entering the house, they simply removed the top layer, remaining in decent clothing. When going out into the cold, they threw on additional layers. It was versatility perfected by generations of practice. But even the best protection for the body is useless if heat is lost through the upper part of the body. In the next chapter, you will learn how they coped with protecting the most vulnerable part of the body. The head and neck are the main unprotected gateways for catastrophic heat loss in the human body. A large number of major blood vessels and arteries run very close to the surface of the skin on the neck and temples. When cooled in this area, the blood flows directly to the brain already ice cold, which quickly leads to general hypothermia. Medieval people knew from bitter experience that if your head is cold, the rest of your body will inevitably freeze too. Therefore, a good headdress was not a fashion accessory at all, but an essential element of basic survival in winter. The basis of this multi-layered protection was a thick linen cap called a coif. It was always worn first, becoming a second skin for the head. The coif fit very tightly around the skull, completely covering the ears and hair, and was securely tied with ribbons under the chin. Its main purpose was hygiene and to collect moisture secreted by the skin. It perfectly absorbed sweat from the forehead, preventing it from running into the eyes during work, and protected the expensive wool of the hood from skin oils. Washing a small linen cap was much easier and cheaper than cleaning a large woolen hood. A hood was worn over the cape. a separate massive hood with a wide cape covering the shoulders and chest. This design was truly ingenious in its simplicity and incredible effectiveness. The cape, which descended onto the back and chest, covered the most vulnerable area, the junction between the head and the torso. In modern clothing, it is often the neck that remains a weak spot where the icy wind blows. In our jackets, the cold often penetrates through the collar, treacherously blowing down the back of the neck and chilling the back. The hood lay heavily on the shoulders, completely blocking this path for cold air. This created a single airtight dome under which the body heat rising from the torso was retained. Wet snow and freezing rain rolled off the thick woolen cape onto the clothing without reaching the neck. Water simply could not seep inside, thanks to the correct angle of the fabric. The long decorative tail of the hood, called a liripip, also had an important practical use. In heavy snow or frost, it could be wrapped tightly around the neck instead of a scarf, securing the hood. This allowed the face to be covered with fabric almost up to the eyes, leaving only a narrow slit for vision. This transformation turned the hood into a blind mask, protecting the skin of the face from frostbite. The design of the hood allowed the head to be turned freely without exposing the neck to the piercing wind. The hood moved with the person, like part of their body, rather than restricting their view, unlike modern stiff jacket hoods. This was vital for travelers, who needed to constantly watch the road and potential dangers. In a warm room, the hood could be simply thrown back with a single movement of the hand. It remained hanging on the shoulders, continuing to warm the upper back and shoulder blades like an extra cape. It was impossible to lose or forget it somewhere, as it was always part of the costume, worn over the head. The double layer of fabric on the head, moisture-wicking linen and thick warm wool, created a powerful thermos effect. Winter hoods were often made with an additional lining of different wool or even lined with fur for the nobility. It was a hat, a thick scarf, and a windproof collar in one versatile garment. The variety of ways to wear a hood still amazes fashion historians. In hot weather or for work, it could be rolled up into an intricate turban on the head. Small coins were sometimes carried in the long tail of the liripip, or it was used as a belt. Particular attention was paid to protecting sensitive ears and the back of the head from side winds. The tight fit of the heavy woolen hood dampened gusts of wind, reliably preventing drafts and ear infections. At the same time, natural loose wool did not muffle surrounding sounds as much as dense synthetic hats. A person in the forest had to hear every rustle very well in order to notice danger or game in time. The hood allowed them to maintain full auditory control over the situation while staying warm. The same physical principle of layering was used to protect the face from instant frostbite. The stiff edge of the hood protruding forward created a deep air pocket right in front of the person's face. The warm air exhaled was trapped in this space, warming the tip of the nose and cheeks. The result was an invisible warm cushion that softened the impact of the icy air when breathing in. Modern synthetic balaclavas often get wet quickly from breathing in freeze, turning into a crust of ice on the face. The woolen edge of the hood absorbed a lot of moisture, but continued to warm even when wet. This unique property of wool has saved the noses and cheeks of travelers for centuries. Interestingly, the shape, color of the fabric, and trim of the hood could reveal a lot about the social status of its owner. The rich wore bright cloth hoods with festoons, while the poor wore simple gray or brown ones made of coarse wool. But the functional basis and cut remained absolutely unchanged for all classes of society. The king and the lowest peasant wore structurally similar headgear because the physics of cold are the same for all people. Refusal to wear a hood in winter was considered a sign of obvious madness or extreme poverty. This item of clothing was so important and personal that it was often decorated with embroidery and cared for more than other clothes. The hood was a true symbol of security, comfort, and readiness for a long journey in any weather. Without it, the image of a medieval traveler seems incomplete, vulnerable, and unprotected from the elements. It was a reliable personal roof over your head that you always carried with you. What if I told you that the pants we are used to and find comfortable are actually far from the best choice for harsh winters? Medieval fashion and survival logic offered a solution that seems strange and even ridiculous to modern people. But it was incredibly practical. We are talking about a complex system of separate stockings and breeches, loose-fitting linen pants. Chaps were not a single pair of pants, but separate long woolen tubes for each leg, which were attached to the belt with special laces. This unusual design provided a warrior or traveler with incredible freedom of movement, completely unavailable in modern jeans or thick pants. When walking through deep, loose snow or forest debris, it is vital to lift your legs high so as not to get stuck. At this point, ordinary sewn trousers inevitably pull on the knees and buttocks, restricting each step and requiring extra effort to move forward. This quickly tires the muscles, and wasting energy in the cold can be life-threatening. Separate leggings move completely independently of each other, without creating any tension in the fabric or hindering the person's stride. The breeches, tucked inside or worn over the leggings, created a complex, multi-layered insulating package in the groin area. This allowed for flexible regulation of heat exchange in the hottest area of the human body, where large arteries pass. Linen absorbed moisture, and wool provided warmth, creating an ideal microclimate. Woolen hose were always cut by craftsmen along the bias of the fabric, which made the cloth surprisingly elastic without any modern elastane. They fit the leg very tightly, working on the principle of modern sports compression underwear and supporting tired muscles. This really reduced leg fatigue during long, multi-kilometer walks and improved venous blood flow. The absence of excess fabric hanging around the calves helped to retain precious heat much better. The icy air did not circulate inside the trouser legs while walking, cooling the skin, as is the case with wide trousers. The feet were protected just as reliably as the shins and thighs in this system. Chaussee often had a sewn-in toe section, covering the foot completely, like a thick, high sock. Thick insoles made of felted wool or a bundle of dry straw were always inserted into the shoes for additional insulation from the frozen ground. Straw was an excellent and, most importantly, free replaceable insulator, available to every poor person. If it got wet from sweat or snow, it was simply thrown away and the shoes were stuffed with new dry grass. This ingenious and simple solution was available in any field or forest, making people independent of equipment. The shoes were made of genuine leather, which was generously impregnated with animal fat or tar for complete water resistance. It was soft and never squeezed the foot, which was critically important in severe frost. The toes had to move freely inside the shoe so that hot blood could constantly circulate and warm them. Special wooden clogs, soles on high platforms with straps, were often worn over soft leather shoes. They lifted a person above the mud, icy slush, and snow, keeping their feet dry. This created a protective air gap between the thin sole of the boot and the cold ground. This design worked like medieval galoshes, protecting expensive shoes and the health of the owner. The knees, as the joints most vulnerable to cold and wind, were protected by a double or triple layer of thick wool. A long upper shirt or kata always covered the legs to the knees, completely covering the hose from above. As a result, the thighs were securely covered by 3 layers: linen breeches, woolen hose, and the hem of the tunic. This created a powerful thermal skirt around the legs that trapped warm air. At the same time, nothing blew in from below, thanks to the very tight fit of the narrow trousers around the shins. If one pair of leggings accidentally got wet in a stream or torn on branches, it could be easily replaced or dried separately from the other. There was no need to take off the entire pair of pants and remain exposed in the bitter cold. You could simply untie one leg, quickly dry it by the fire, and put it back on. This unique modularity really saved the legs of many travelers from hypothermia and subsequent gangrene. The system of leather garters below the knee not only held the stockings in place so they wouldn't slip, but also worked as a light tourniquet in case of injury. Everything in this costume was thought out by our ancestors down to the smallest detail. There was absolutely nothing superfluous in this austere design, only pure functionality and utility. Separate trouser legs made it easy to relieve oneself without exposing large areas of the body, which is extremely important for retaining heat in winter. We are used to trousers as the only option for men's clothing. But from the point of view of movement ergonomics and thermophysics, the old medieval design had a number of undeniable advantages. It allowed a person to move more actively, expend less energy per step, and retain body heat more efficiently. It was clothing for living in the wild, not for sitting in a warm office. But how can you protect yourself from death when you sleep directly on the snow or stand motionless on guard duty? In the next chapter, you will learn about the most versatile and indispensable item in the medieval wardrobe. For medieval people, a cloak was much more than just a piece of outerwear or a status symbol. It was a real portable tent, a personal sleeping bag, and a warm blanket all in one. It was usually a simple semicircle or large rectangle made of very thick, felted cloth. This material was specially treated for so long that it became stiff and practically stood upright. The fabric did not let in the icy wind or pouring rain, functioning like modern tarpaulin. A high-quality travel cloak could weigh several kilograms, weighing heavily on the shoulders. But it was this impressive mass and density that gave a person the necessary protection on the road. Lightweight fabric simply could not retain body heat in strong gusts of wind. It was real armor against the elements, which was always with you. The special design of the wide cloak allowed the traveler to wrap themselves completely in it, including their head. This created a closed, airtight cocoon, inside which a layer of warm air was retained. A person could simply crouch down somewhere under a tree and cover themselves with the fabric like a dome. In this position, it was possible to wait out any bad weather, keeping the warmth of one's own breath inside the shelter. The temperature inside such a cocoon was significantly higher than outside. Heavy folds of coarse fabric fell to the ground around the feet, tightly blocking any drafts from below. The result was a small personal yurt, warmed by its owner. In this position, experienced warriors could sleep even on the bare frozen ground or in the snow. They did not need tents, as the cloak completely replaced the roof over their heads. The cloak was designed without sleeves, which was a huge advantage rather than a disadvantage. This allowed you to hide your hands inside, pressing them against your warm stomach or under your armpits. This simple action solved the problem of freezing fingers much better than any woolen mittens. The hands were warmed by the body, and the heat did not escape through unnecessary openings in the clothing. If necessary, his hands could be quickly pulled out to work or engage in sudden combat. The enemy could not see what a person was holding under their cloak, which gave them a tactical advantage. The absence of complex cuts and seams made the cloak incredibly durable and long-lasting. There was simply nothing to tear or wear out over time. A single piece of high-quality cloth could serve its owner for a lifetime. Often, the winter cloaks of wealthy people were lined with fur, which turned them into real warm fur coats. But even a simple woolen cloak of a poor man was an effective insulator against the cold. It could be folded several times and used as a soft bedding during a rest stop. Rolled up, it replaced a pillow, making sleep on the hard ground bearable. On a military campaign, a sturdy cloak could be used to carry heavy items or drag a wounded comrade. It was a universal and indispensable tool for survival in the wild. Without it, a person felt naked and defenseless in the face of nature. Losing a cloak was considered a real disaster, threatening death. The cloak's fastener, called a fibula, allowed it to be securely fixed in a variety of positions. It was usually fastened on the right shoulder to leave the right hand free for a sword. In severe cold, it could be wrapped tightly around the body, hiding both hands and the face. The metal needle of the fibula had to be strong enough to pierce thick fabric. The cloak reliably protected the back from the piercing wind during long walks on the roads. If the wind blew in the face, the cloak was turned around to create a shield for the chest and neck. It created an additional, outermost, and most powerful air buffer around the body. It was the last line of defense, separating the living warmth of a person from the deadly cold of winter.
The finest wool in all.
Here is an expanded version of your text. I have increased the volume by about 2 times, kept the structure, and broken the text into more paragraphs for ease of narration. The style remains simple and historically accurate. Today, natural fur is most often perceived by us as a sign of great luxury or an optional element of high fashion. In the harsh times of the Middle Ages, the attitude towards it was purely utilitarian and vitally necessary. At that time, fur was worn by absolutely all classes, from powerful kings to the poorest beggars on the church steps. The only difference was in the type of animal and the quality of the fur. The nobility wore sable and ermine, while peasants made do with what the forest provided. For ordinary people, it was the most affordable and effective insulation that could be obtained with their own hands. The skins of ubiquitous rabbits, squirrels, domestic cats, sheep, and even wolves were used as warm lining for clothing. No one disdained using any fur if it helped them survive the winter. The main goal was survival, not beauty, so the skins of any furry animals were used. In those days, fur was mainly used with the skin facing outwards and the fluffy fur facing inwards, towards the body. This way, the thick pile created a reliable layer of immovable warm air directly against the skin or on top of the lower layers of clothing. This worked much more effectively and correctly than fur on the outside, which could quickly get wet from the snow and turn into ice. The inner fur kept the person warm, while the dense outer fabric or leather protected the fur itself from moisture and mechanical damage. This design turned the clothing into a real thermos. Ordinary sheepskin was the most common and indispensable material for winter clothing for most of the population. Heavy sheepskin coats and sleeveless vests made of coarse sheepskin were incredibly warm and surprisingly durable. The unique wavy structure of sheep's wool created an excellent springy air layer that retained heat. Such dense fur not only kept you warm, but also absorbed shocks well, serving as a kind of soft armor in everyday life. In a sheepskin coat, you could sleep on the ground or work in the forest without fear of injury. The rich fur trim on the sleeves and wide collar had a deep practical meaning, not just serving as decoration. The thick pile of fur on the edges of the garment caught flying snowflakes and hoarfrost, preventing them from melting on warm skin and seeping inside. Hot frozen breath settled as safe frost on the fur trim of the hood, which could then be easily brushed off with a hand. This reliably prevented severe frostbite of the face, nose, and neck in strong headwinds. The fur acted as a filter, blocking the icy air from exposed areas of the body. Fur was also widely used in folk medicine for local warming of sore spots and aching joints. Warming belts made of dog hair or wolf skins were often used for severe pain in the lower back or sciatica. Winter mittens were almost always made of fur, often with a special slit to quickly remove the bare hand for fine work. Fur was a natural and completely renewable resource that people obtained themselves through hunting or animal husbandry. The forest and farming provided people with everything they needed to protect themselves from the deadly cold. A huge advantage of medieval clothing was its absolute and complete repairability in all conditions. Any item of clothing, even the most complex, could be easily repaired right in the field with just a bone needle and strong thread in your pocket. Natural wool does not fray or creep like modern capricious synthetics, so its edges did not even need to be finished. An accidental hole from a branch or arrow could be quickly mended, and the area would not lose any of its thermal insulation properties. Soldiers and travelers did not depend on workshops and could restore their equipment to working order in a couple of minutes. Heavily worn clothing was never thrown away, as we are accustomed to doing now. Old, worn-out coats often became excellent warm linings for new outerwear, saving expensive material. Items that had become completely worn out were used as rags for cleaning weapons or turned into soft padding for quilted military jackets. It was a completely waste-free cycle of textile use, dictated by poverty and common sense. Clothes lived a long life alongside their owners, aging and changing, but continuing to serve faithfully in a new capacity. Each item had enormous durability, inherent in the very nature of the materials. Over time, natural fabrics could even significantly improve their protective properties through wear. Wool shed moisture and friction, becoming much denser, more windproof, and warmer. Coarse linen became soft and pleasant to the body after many washes, without causing irritation. Stiff leather shoes and wide belts gradually took on the exact shape of their owner's body, becoming as comfortable as possible. It was a kind of smart adaptation of the material to its owner, but not through electronics, but through simple physics. Things rubbed against the person, becoming their second skin. Unlike modern high-tech membranes, which have a service life of only 3 to 5 years, a high-quality woolen cloak could last for decades. It was completely resistant to aggressive ultraviolet rays and did not delaminate over time or due to temperature changes. The only formidable enemy of such clothing was moths, but people knew how to successfully combat them with the help of fragrant herbs and regular airing. The reliability of personal equipment was a guarantee that it would not fail or fall apart at the most critical moment of a storm or battle. The material value of high-quality clothing was such that it was often mentioned in detailed wills on a par with land. A good warm cloak made of dyed wool could cost as much as a milk cow or a small wooden house in the village. People took care of their belongings and looked after them carefully, knowing full well that they were their main protection against the hostile cold world. The loss of clothing was a tragedy that threatened death from hypothermia. This shaped a strict culture of careful consumption, which we sorely lack in today's disposable world. We are accustomed to viewing history as linear progress, where the new is always better than the old. But when it comes to individual protection from the cold, we may have taken a wrong turn. Technological clothing has made us dependent on industry, washing machines, and special treatments. We have gained lightness and brightness, but lost autonomy and reliability. Medieval clothing was a life support system powered by the body itself. It did not require batteries or dry cleaning. It forgave mistakes, allowed you to dry by an open fire and sleep on the snow. It was clothing for living in a world where nature does not forgive weakness. Today, we are seeing a resurgence of interest in natural materials. Extreme tourists are once again buying wool thermal underwear and wool jackets. We are beginning to understand that synthetics are good for sports, but for long-term survival, there is nothing better than the classics that have been proven over centuries. Nature has created the perfect materials, and humans have not yet managed to surpass them. Knowledge of how to layer properly and how to wear wool and linen was lost in the era of mass marketing. We have forgotten how to feel our clothes and understand their capabilities. Restoring this knowledge may not just be a historical reconstruction, but a real survival skill for the future. Perhaps we should reconsider our winter wardrobe and add a couple of items from the past to it. A real wool sweater, linen shirt, or felted socks may prove to be more useful than the most expensive membrane jacket. History gives us clues, and it would be foolish not to use them. Survival isn't always about new technology. Sometimes it's about looking back and taking the best from the experience of our ancestors. The Middle Ages were a cruel time, but it was this cruelty that gave rise to perfect tools of defense. Clothing was armor against the cold, and this armor was flawless. We have come a long way from linen shirts to heavy woolen cloaks, examining each layer of medieval protection. Now you know what saved people from the bitter cold when the wind blew through their homes and death awaited them in the forest. This knowledge is not just a historical fact, but a survival guide written by life itself. Wool, linen, and air are the three pillars that kept Europe warm. What topics should we cover in the next video? Would you like to learn about medieval medicine or what knights ate on their campaigns? Write your suggestions in the comments. Subscribe to the channel and click the bell so you don't miss new dives into history. See you soon.